Shabbat Shalom everyone, and I hope everyone has had a good week. So we've all heard of a wake-up call, and I don't just mean in the sense of something that wakes us up first thing in the morning, although if anyone does have any good tips on how to get a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old to sleep past 7 o'clock, I'm all ears. But I mean a wake-up call in the sense of a life wake-up call. Now, there was a fascinating study done a couple of years ago where they looked at people who were living close to the edge financially, and all of a sudden, some of those people got a little bit more of a financial shock. They got into some, through no fault of their own, they ended up in a situation where things were even more challenging than they were before. Now, they followed these people for a couple of years, and what they discovered was a fascinating thing, that actually they ended up financially better off than their peers. They ended up with less debt, with less credit, with any of those, with less financial challenges than other people in their peer group who didn't go through this difficulty. And the reason for that was because as a result of this difficulty, they worked hard. As a result of this difficulty, they saved more. They probably went through difficult few years, no question. But at the end of that time, they ended up actually in a financially better place than the other peers. This week we read about the Metzora, one who is afflicted with the spiritual tzara'at, sometimes mistranslated as leprosy, but some sort of skin condition which we're told is a result of very specific sins, either the way that a person spoke or the arrogance that a person showed, various other things which are attributed to this spiritual affliction. But actually there was a two-stage process. So initially a person may see a lesion on their skin, and they may see something that they thought was tzarat, and they would go to the priest, they would go to the Kohen, they would say, is this an affliction or is this not? And the Kohen would say, we're going to have to wait and see. What you need to do is need to go into isolation. People may be familiar. You need to go into isolation, you need to separate for a little bit, and you need to watch it to see how it goes. Now after a time we're going to check it, and we're going to look. If it's got better, then that's great. And if it hasn't, then we're going to actually declare this person a Metzora. We're going to decide that they have tzarat, and then they're going to have to follow through with a much longer, more complicated and more arduous process of purification. Now, our commentaries note that this two-stage process was actually there as an opportunity for the person to have a bit of self-analysis during that time. And really, I think that's exactly what isolation provides. Isolation provides a time to think. Because life, of course, changes drastically when you're forced into isolation. As we all know, no matter what we were doing a couple of months ago, life is unquestionably different now for every single one of us. And it gives us a chance to analyze and to rethink. And that's what a wake-up call does. To think about all the different things that we were doing before, and whether we would do them exactly the same way when life returns to normal, or life returns to some sort of normal. What we will do with our time, how we will interact with people differently, how we will connect to community differently. What does community mean to us? All those sorts of things are all questions and opportunities for us to think about. And rather than coming to the conclusion that actually life was better before, what I like to take away from this is that with a wake-up call, actually life can be better afterwards. That just as the people who had this financial challenge, this financial wake-up call, this difficulty which they faced, ended up in a better position, and the Metzora, who has this opportunity to think about what they've done, can actually be better off as a result. We also have a chance to decide what our life is going to look like in the future, to decide what we're going to implement. Now, it's not going to be an overnight change. We're not going to walk back into our regular life, say all of a sudden everything is fantastic now, but to begin to think about what are some of the things that we would like to implement and how our lives perhaps could improve as a result of these challenges that we've all been through. Just a few thoughts on Parashat Metzora, and of course we're reading Tazria this week as well. And I wish everybody a fantastic Shabbat Shalom, a nice and peaceful Shabbat.